Let me get my life together so I can share some information with y'all, because and turn on my AC. I turned it off and now I need it on because it is burning up in this car. I've been sitting here writing messages so that I can share this with my community. And I know that I got a lot of new people who are following me now, or who are making requests to be friends, and I need you to know my story of how I got to social media, how I got to Facebook. You know, I was actually invited to Facebook by my midwife of my first son, who was born at home. And her encouragement for me to be here was because of how magical she felt like my birth experience was. And it was her first call birth, or a baby born in the veil. So my water never broke. For those of you who are looking at like, what does that mean? My baby was born fully intact in his water bag, and it was broken as he as he came out. Like, my husband was like, oh my God, like, what is this? It's a baby and he's in the bag. And he's a very special young man, and if any of you locally have met him, you know his spirit is like it is, because I believe that he was covered with this veil, you know, to be a beautiful human being, okay? And so one of the things that I want to share, because I made a post about home birth and free birth, which with my second son, we had an unassisted home birth, which I will say unassisted because my chosen midwife at the time in Georgia, she didn't make it to the birth on time. Baby was already out when she got there, and to be honest, I didn't want her there in the first place. Like, it was like, okay, yeah, you came when you needed to come, because I really wanted to experience the intimacy of having my baby with just me and my husband, and that was that, okay? And so in that experience, I learned with my third pregnancy that I didn't need to be tended to in that particular moment. Like, I needed just my husband and, you know, my children, and I needed the postpartum support more than I needed the birth observation. Because one of the things that I've also learned over time in supporting women in childbirth is that too many eyes, meaning too many voyeurs, too many people in the room, force you to feel performative. And in being performative, you take a different seat in the space and place of childbirth that ultimately conflicts with the natural process of an undisturbed birth. So when it was just my husband and I giving birth to our third son, I realized at that moment that there's no way that women are unsafe when they are in the environment that is most conducive to what they identify as safe. Women are only unsafe when they believe that they're unsafe. And when a woman believes that she's unsafe, the environment shifts to the perspective of what she believes. And I'm talking about this from a very high spiritual level of consciousness, because I've witnessed what it feels like to be safe, and then what it feels like to be unsafe, and how the pheromones and the hormones change and shift to drive a narrative that continues to perpetuate in the timeline of lack of safety. So unsafe environments in the mind set first perpetuates a gateway to be exposed to unsafe environments, okay? So in that, I learned that when I felt safe, I could give birth in a way that was very easy. And with my third son, I actually had an orgasm giving birth to him, because I felt so much at ease and at peace with what I was doing at that moment, that it liberated me in a way that I know a lot of times people be like, what you mean you had an orgasm? Birth is painful. His birth was easy. And that's all I kept saying. I just want an easy, peaceful birth. I just want to have an easy, peaceful birth. I just want to have my baby, and it's just, the process feels good to me, and I feel satisfied and fulfilled after he's born. That was like my mantra in my mind, you know. And so when he came out, it was fulfilling, it was easy, it was peaceful, it was pleasureful, and it was a free birth. That meant that I didn't have clinical support. I bought a birth center, a birth kit. It was $25 because I only spent $25 on an emergency birth kit, because I already knew that spending $100, $200, $300 on a birth kit in a tub and all of that was really a waste of money. And because the only thing that I really used in it was the pads, the panties, the mesh panties, and the measuring tape, and the shears, the sutures, surgical shears, which was to cut the cord. Which we did delayed cord clamping, right, and cutting. And we learned all of this stuff from our first birth experience. And so when I talk about a free birth, I ain't meaning just free like the freedom and the liberation to make the move, but it was free because it was economically free for us. We didn't have the economical burden that a lot of people have. And when I started training in 2013, and really I was training already because I was a mama, you know. And when I started to train with the matrona, that was part of her prerequisite. It's like, have you already given birth to your own children? Have you already had the experience? And I was like, yeah, this is my third time, you know. And later on, as I continued to move and navigate through the process, you know, I learned that, like, there's a difference. You know, an undisturbed birth can still be a birth where you have a clinical provider, meaning a midwife, or a doula who's not clinical. She's more so emotional support in your corner to help you do the birth experience that you want, right? But in the event that someone doesn't show up and you have a planned home birth on the table, on the schedule, then that's an unassisted birth, right? And these are my definitions. If y'all got your own definitions, y'all don't come in my comments talking shit, because I don't want to hear that. You make your own video about how you want to interpret what you did, okay? The aspects of having a free birth for us was that we didn't have a midwife. It was just us, my husband and I, and our kids, and we continued through the birthing process on our own with maximum freedom. Okay? With our fourth baby, which was born here in Oklahoma, we had I like to call it a friendship birth. Because although my good girlfriend was a midwife, and my other girlfriend was a labor and delivery nurse, doula, like was doing her thing, it was still me and my husband. And my husband was a bear. He was like, listen, we didn't already did this. Y'all just here to help after. Like, y'all not here to intervene in no kind of way besides to help after the baby get here. You know, and he was clear about that. And so the fact that we had that support there afterwards was what we needed, right? And I'm sure that a lot of people have conflicts about how people choose to give birth. But I want you to think about it. Like, if people had a conflict about the way that you decided to have sex, you know, which we are seeing that today too. Everything about reproductive health in whatever capacity, whether it's sexual, whether it's childbirth, whether it's postpartum, like, we all got these ideas around how we want to experience that. And that becomes the essence of the work to me, that you're able to do this and experience these things in a way that makes the most sense to you. It ain't about what another person thinks. It ain't about what the politicians think. It's about what you think. And that's the freedom. And so there is a difference. There is home birth. There is unassisted birth. There's free birth. Okay. And then like I said, I got another line. I got friend birth on my list. Okay. So my home birth was, when I said then I free birth, and it's kind of like the same. The same thing of it is that every birth that I've had out of my own physical body, out of my own birth canal, has been at my house, wherever I lived. When I lived in Georgia, when I lived in Arizona, when I live in here, it's all been in my house. And when women choose to give birth like that, they not choosing it. I hope they not choosing it necessarily because they are fearful of the institution, but they are choosing it because that is what their spirit is calling them to do. And there is a conflict in the community right now of providers that a lot of women are transferring still into the medical establishment, the medical industrial complex, the MIC, okay, because they are fearful of childbirth itself. And they think that having the baby at home is going to take that fear away from them having to go to the medical industrial complex, to the MIC. But if they go to the MIC and they have the poor outcome that they didn't want to have, it was because they weren't prepared to have birth at home. And so when I started doing this work as an NLP, right, a neuro-linguistic practitioner, that's where I started. I got that certification first. You know, and then I started saying, okay, well, let me go do this doula work. Right? Let me go do this doula work. I started learning about hypnosis and mindset shifting and mental transmutation and all of the things that help you to get your mind in alignment with the process. And so when we don't have our minds in alignment with the process, we miss out on a lot of opportunities. And the biggest opportunity that you can miss out on is a fulfilled birth. And I know so many people that they don't want to call out their midwives because it ain't her fault. It's not her fault. She's not there to save you from what you can't save yourself from. So we shout to the physicians, listen to Black women. We shout to the physicians, listen to women. We shout to them, but then at the same time, women, you ain't listening to yourself. Flip the card. You got to listen to yourself. And because we've been trained and taught to not listen to ourselves, our inner guiding system does not perpetuate the beauty of what birth can produce, which means to become alive. Not just the baby becoming alive, but the woman, the family becoming more alive in the experience of what happens when you have an undisturbed birth. So anyway, that's why I gave birth at home. I gave birth at home, 1, because I wanted to know it was my baby. 2 is because I wanted it to be undisturbed and I wanted to control the outcome. And 3, because it was just ancestrally calling to my heart to say that this is how I was supposed to do it. So anybody who got, some beef with that, like, I don't care. I already did it and I ain't doing it again. I've supported people who've done it and they've done it successfully with no poor birth outcomes. And that's what I do. And now I'm moving and transitioning outside of the birth space, and I can share these stories now because I'm over that. Like I've done that for the past 10, 12 years. I can move on now, and while I'm working into my own process of my divine space and place in this work to facilitate space for the individuals who are coming in and getting them prepared before they even take on the conception space. So anyway, love, light, liberation. I hope this helps somebody today. And yeah, that's all I got to say. Peace.